Welcome to episode 5 of the Lead Gen Hustler Show, where today we're excited to have Justin Chi, a mastermind in cold email in the lead gen space and the co-founder of Cold Email Hackers. His work has had remarkable results for a notable clients such as PayArc, ClearCard, and a ton of others in the B2B fintech space and across the sales sphere. And as we dive into this conversation, we're going to explore how Justin got into the space, his approach to lead gen, leveraging cold email, and uncover the strategies and insights that have positioned Justin as expert in the field. Justin, it is a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks for coming on. How are you doing?
Likewise, man. Pleasure to be on. I'm doing very well. Just calling from the San Francisco Bay Area. So just pretty early in the morning here.
Well, good morning. And it's a little bit later in London, but it's honestly, it's great to have you on. And I'm super excited for this episode. Likewise. So to kick off, I'd love you to just tell the people what you do. Maybe just give a little bit of background into Cold Email Hackers.
Yeah, do we want to talk about like the kind of how we started, or is that for later?
Or just a quick sure. Maybe just a quick like 1 minute just to talk a little bit about like what Cold Email Hackers is about, and then we'll jump into your background and the journey as well.
So I would say, we're obviously like there's a million cold email lead gen agencies out there. But we have a pretty simple service offering. We just do B2B cold email lead generation. We do message market fit, like we test your message market fit if you're kind of a startup. If you're a more established company, we obviously help you scale that up. So we help with all processes of the outbound top of funnel process, right? Like if your product's not quite there yet, we'll help you test message market fit, get you that first base level of, I guess, meetings, right? People are interested in speaking to you. And if you already have that, maybe you have SDRs already, we just kind of help you scale that motion up more cost effective. So service offering wise, very simple, but we do have a lot of expertise. So we're able to really blow this up depending on the service offering, right? Like I always say offering is king, but we help you tweak the offer and we help you, build the systems to scale up the messaging again for more people. So
nice. Yeah, I've heard messaging is your strong suit. So we'll definitely jump into uncovering that in a little bit. But I want to go back to the early days. Actually funny because it seems like you have a similar background getting started in SaaS. So from what I understand, you started in ZoomInfo, right? Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, we go pretty far back. I started.
We can go further
right now. Yeah, I'm 24 right now. I started business at 18. That failed when I was 19. Well, it's actually 17. I started. It failed when I was 19. So long story there. I ended up. I went to college while I was doing that. Dropped out to start that business. We were selling graphics cards, and then that kind of failed, but luckily it was maybe about a year or so. I didn't really do anything, but then I got into tech sales during the tech boom in 2021, about the beginning or so. And I just found I had a knack for cold calling, cold emailing, stuff like that, right? Like I worked for a startup called Cloud Comply, and we did a lot of like, it was very specific software, right? So we had to do a lot of work on like understanding the ICP. There's only so many people who could use that software. So we were always calling the same leads, that kind of stuff. I think that's where I really learned how to write messaging for a company because they didn't really have brand recognition, right? So there's that. Got into ZoomInfo after, and that was a cakewalk, honestly. Like working at the startup taught me a lot about messaging, that kind of stuff. And it was pretty hard because you had to sit there. There's maybe 500 companies that are ICP at the time for that startup. So when I got into ZoomInfo, sorry, can I cut out there? At the time I was an SDR there. Is that good now?
No, it's all good. Yeah, we're back.
Yeah, it was just funny. It's like, I don't know what happened there. Yeah. But yeah, during the time I was an SDR there, basically just blew out of the water, 80, 100, 120 meetings a month. And the way our company was started, Cold Email Hackers, was we had a lot of people, because this is when I started figuring out you could just email people. I don't sit at the phone and call people all day, right? So I sent emails, people liked the emails I was sending, and they just kind of reached back out to me to do consulting. They want me to write their emails. They want me to help them figure out outbound, that kind of stuff. That's how I got my first few clients. Now, as far as how I figured out this email deliverability stuff, there's this guy on LinkedIn. I'm sure everybody knows him, Jesse Willett. We're good friends now, but he had a course, he had a podcast, whatever. He had a webinar, just learned everything from there, did my own testing, broke a bunch of stuff, and then kind of turned into what it is today. So yeah.
That's awesome. So when did you start? When did you start Cold Email Hackers? Like, was that
officially like full time about 1 year to this day, like full time?
Okay, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And then Okay, and then so you started it initially to like whilst at Zoom Info, or was it?
Yeah.
Okay, nice.
We
Yeah,
won't get too much detail there, but yeah,
yeah.
it's a side gig basically for a while. And I
Nice.
didn't take it seriously for a bit. And I was just like,
Yeah,
you know what? I'll
just
just
people
use this.
started asking you for copy and
Yeah.
different things.
Yeah. And honestly, I didn't know what I was doing with like email deliverability. I knew none of that. So it took about 6 months or so as a side gig to really figure that part out. So
Okay, nice. And then when
Mhm.
did you go all in? Like a year ago, you said you went all in on the offering.
Exactly. Actually, 21st, January 21st last year. So about 4 days past the year now.
Oh
Quite
wow!
crazy. Yeah, it's
Congrats!
1 year
It's
anniversary.
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a crazy
Yeah,
year. We've just been learning a lot of lessons, breaking things, getting distracted, getting back on track, that kind of stuff. So I'm sure you understand me. You own an agency.
yeah.
So yeah.
I get it. I get it.
Yeah,
It's awesome. The grind is real.
exactly.
So what did your like initial service offering look like? So how did it evolve from
Yeah.
like offering consulting and just advising on different
Yeah.
one-off, I guess, purchases to actually creating a monthly retained service or recurring service?
Yeah. I mean, it's gone through a lot of iterations. I will
Yeah.
say like I got quite distracted, right? Like I got distracted here and there, tried a bunch of different stuff. So that was probably the biggest lesson I've learned in the past 12 months. Where I guess where it turned into an actual outsourced lead generation agency, like full service. A lot of my clients, they were just asking me to set it up for them. Maybe they had me do messaging and they pass off the SDRs, the founder was doing it, just wasn't cutting it. Maybe they're missing like target, like the target was off or something. They just couldn't crack it, so they brought me in. So it just kind of naturally happened for me.
That's awesome. And then what does the service look like today? Like what's the offering?
Yeah, so we do flat retainer plus per meeting on top. So it's just like the same model as if you hire an SDR and paid them. We just copy that basically. So the way I like to pitch it is you might pay an SDR benefits. I don't know how it is in the UK, in the US. You might pay an SDR benefits, $5,000 or $6,000 a month base, and then you pay them per meeting. So we charge a bit less than 5,000 or 6,000 as of now. As of the recording, that may change. We charge a bit less than 5,000 or 6,000, and you don't pay us benefits. We have experience, and it's like this is the way I pitch. I know you wanted to get to this later, but just
Yeah, this is super valuable.
is the way I pitch it. I'm sure other people are hearing this. Is like, look, first we're cheaper, right? That's obviously like everybody's gonna say that we're cheaper. But the second part is like, you hire an SDR off the street. Let's say he's really good. He wants to get promoted to AE in 6 months. Okay, then you just lost your best SDR. You hire an SDR and he has 2-3 years experience. You got to ask yourself why this guy's still an SDR after 2 or 3 years. For us, this is our whole business. So like we're just here to book meetings for you. We're not gonna ask you to get promoted. If you're satisfied with service, we just keep going for you basically. So
Nice. So that's the spiel. That's good.
yeah.
That's interesting. And then, yeah, in terms of the way that it's set up, just whilst we're jumping into the offering, you said like, you're charging a little bit less than what someone would be paying to be able to bring an SDR in plus on booked meetings. Is that correct
Yeah.
as well? Okay, cool. And then in the way that you do so, does it vary dependent on the volume or the amount that someone is sending, or is it just like there is a standard model that you've perfected which you use when you do work with every business, which is a set number of emails, and then you then understand that's what it is within that monthly?
I figure this is my experience. So you can tell me what you think about this, but my experience is like we usually try to. So basically, we sit down with the client and we write down different angles, right? Like different pain points, why someone might buy the product, who would be buying it, what problem we solve for this particular persona. So we have like a bunch of variants, right? So we just set it out to where each variant will have 300 to 400 to 500 emails sent per variant. And if we send that many emails, we don't get any positive responses. There's a high chance of what works. We just exit, and then we just go with the ones that have some success, and we figure out how to iterate and make that one better. So
that's super interesting. And we're going to dive into your entire campaign process in a minute.
Sure.
Step one, I'd love to just hear a little bit about, like you said, you've chopped and changed and you're perfecting the whole time. What does your like process look like in terms of client fulfillment and like delivery from someone initially coming into that initial phone call through to do they sign a contract or is there no contract? And then how do they move through to, being actually put into whatever tool you've chosen to run campaigns?
Sure. So I'll touch on the contract part because it's actually interesting because I've been talking to other colleagues about this, like other agency owners. I used to try to lock them in for like 3 to 12-month contracts, but I just started doing month-to-month contracts. Like I don't hold them to a long-term contract, 24-hour cancellation, month to month. I just figured, look, if you're unsatisfied with the service, like just cancel it. Like, I don't want to deal with unhappy customers, right? So there's that. Second part, I guess, like, I'll explain the fulfillment process from start to finish, like we sign a client. So typically, you
That's
sign a
interesting
client.
though. That's just super interesting that you don't lock someone in and you
Yeah,
know, you're like, hey, like you can leave with 24 hours notice. That means that
yeah,
like you are so confident in your service. And I feel like that's the
yeah,
standout key to, you know, succeed right now when it's so competitive.
yeah. And I feel like, look, like, I'll say this, right? There's certainly clients where in the past we just haven't, like, cybersecurity is difficult. I couldn't fulfill for cybersecurity.
Yeah.
In that case, I'm like, well, you shouldn't pay me monthly. I can't fulfill for you. Just don't work for me. Like, if you're
Yeah.
unhappy with me, even on booking meetings, you're unhappy with me. Like, I don't want you to work with me because I don't want to wake up and just have to work with people who are just not too satisfied with me. You know what I mean? So that's how I
Yeah.
see it. So I give them the opt out if possible. But
That
as
makes
far
sense.
as like how to start, how I start with clients, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. You know, they sign the contract and we onboard them. So what I do is I schedule onboarding call. We get an onboarding call. We kind of go over everything. So different angles, right? It's usually an hour when we set aside. So different angles, like who, like I said earlier, was like, who are we selling to? What kind of personas? You know, what kind of customers do you have right now? Because I find a lot of times if the startup is like an early stage, I work like tech companies mostly, right? If it's an early stage startup, it's like a lot of times they don't even know who they're selling to. Like sometimes they're not 100% sure, right? So it's like they have an idea in their head, but what their customers are is a complete different reality. So we just look at their customers. Okay, we try to get demo calls of their customers so we can listen to what they're talking about on the calls. Of course, we interviewed the founders or the sales team themselves, like, hey, who are you selling to? What does your product solve? Like, what does it solve for this particular persona? We just get all the information down that we can. And then we take that information, of course, we write the copy with that. Like, I can explain what we do with the copy. Like, we just write down 3 pain points, kind of like the pain points I discussed, what we hear on the sales call and stuff like that. Plug in a GPT, have my VA do this, and it gives us a rough draft of that copy. And I still have to kind of go and edit it. So I think fulfillment wise, that's something I still need to, at this point, at the time of this recording, I'm still trying to get out of this, but basically I'm still having to edit the copy, right? But the copy itself is
Yeah.
usually GPT generated. Of course, like we're warming up emails for those 2 weeks while we're doing all this onboarding, all this like campaign copywriting, that kind of stuff. And then once it's launched, we just drop as many variants as possible, like 5, 10, 15 variants. And then we just send emails for 2 weeks to see which ones stand out. And then usually in those 2 weeks, we'll get a handful of meetings, find angles for getting meetings, and then we just kind of double down. Like maybe I'll explain the process a bit more. I know we're probably gonna get to
Yeah.
this in a bit, but it's like, you know, maybe we're testing different niches, right? Like let's say for one client, we're testing VP sales at, I don't know, like a logistics company. The other one we're testing at like, sorry, excuse me, like debt collection or something like that, right? So it's like the copy
That's
we're sending
interesting.
out, we're just looking for similarities. And then once we find similarities across 3 or 4 different types of industries, we just use GPT on a bigger list. Like let's say we're selling VP sales, there's 2 different separate industries that we built manual lists for, or 3 manual lists for. We'll just say, okay, well, this messaging worked for logistics, this worked for debt collection, this worked for web film or something like that, right? So it's like the email is largely the same, but that problem statement is tailored to that specific industry. So we're
Yeah.
like, we'll just use GPT to reverse engineer that, so we don't have to do one by one. We'll just pull one big list of VP sales, and then we'll scan their company description, use GPT to read that company description, and then basically come up with that problem statement at scale. And then I'm not having to sit here writing the campaigns or coming up with different, I guess, lists all day. It's just I load a huge list and then boom,
Yeah.
find new clients.
That's super
So,
interesting.
yeah,
And
exactly. So
that's interesting because as well, like I often see like a lot of agencies would not go, hey, we're going to do run campaigns across like several different verticals. We're doing one persona. You need to, you know, go, hey, we're going after that persona. And then within that persona, maybe they'll have like different tiers of seniority. But to say that you'll go like, hey, we'll write copy and test multiple different niches. And then following that, we'll then see what works is a really, you know, good approach, because you get to then just double down after seeing, especially like in a startup where they don't know where they should go at the beginning. It enables them to not have the challenge of having to pick one and then try and then 2 weeks later do another, but just do them all in parallel. And so when you're running campaigns and you're running angles and you're running like batches of contacts, you say you're running like 10 different variations. Is that 10 different campaigns or like?
So this usually within a single campaign, but then we have like A/B tests. sometimes it's like 2-3 campaigns, but we've
Okay.
done like 20 variants. Like we just test so many variants. Like even
And then,
the smallest thing, we just test it. So.
and do you use like a placeholder to be able to switch out the problem statement based off of the vertical that an individual is in, so then they can sit within the same campaign? Is that kind of the idea?
Placeholder, yeah, the problem statement. So I would say
Yeah.
once the first batch campaigns, like the first testing campaigns we send, where it's like we're manually pulling the list, we're manually writing that problem statement. Not really. Like we separate those campaigns like as their own campaigns that have A/B tests within them, right? But once we find that angle, we're like, okay, this works. This type of problem statement works, and we just need to use GPT to reverse engineer it. That's when we do the variable. My best performing campaign, outside of like, after I got out of Zoom Info, my best performing campaign ever. Q4, we literally got like 300 something meetings, and I didn't touch the campaigns at all. We just let it run. Just do the variable, GPT, boom. Like, you know what I mean? There's obviously there's some errors sometimes, right? Like it'll come with GPT was like wonky statements, but for the most part, I'm like, if I could send 50,000 contacts and there's some errors on like even like 2%, 3%, I'll take it. I'm not trying to say
it's worth taking the hit for the
Exactly. It's worth taking the hit. So yeah.
That's awesome. And then okay, cool. So we've spoken about like the copy creation process. How do you go about like the targeting when building out like a TAM? So like I'm a startup, you're approaching me. Like how would you approach building out those lists? And then also do you keep log of the people that you're taking into the searches? Because like when you're generating the second set of lists for new campaigns, often you'll have duplicates. So yeah, just talk me through that.
Yeah, the second part, like the latter part, is something we're working on. I would say just from feedback from clients and kind of like the work I've done. Just being frank, like our stage of agency, like that's a little slack right now. So like tracking wise, working on that, building out some automations, building some dashboards, that kind of stuff. But to answer your question, Smartly does a very good job of blocking out duplicates. So we've just kind of rely on that.
Nice.
And then, excuse me, little under the weather here. But the first part of your question, so as far as like how we address the TAM, that kind of stuff, I mean, we started at a high level. I think you go to agencies, you kind of understand this. We started at a high level. It's like, okay, you want to go after VP sales. And maybe you have an industry in mind. You're like, I don't know. Let's just say logistics, right? Just throw that one out. Let's say you're replacing a tech. Like I'm gonna go into that TAM, that broader TAM, and just look for sub niches if possible, right? Like maybe they're using a certain technology that you replace, or they're using a certain technology that we can add on top of, right? Or maybe they're hiring for a certain type of role, and in that role, in that job description, they're mentioning a certain product or job description or duty, whatever they need done. So it's just like we try to break it out, but I don't like to get too narrow at first. I mean, actually, let me back this up. When I write emails, okay, so I kind of ramble though, so cut me off if you need to, right?
No, but, it's great. It's gold.
Yeah. So this is what I do. It's two things, and it sounds kind of contradictory, but not really. So what I do is I'll break it down. I'll break each of these down to like sub niches, right? So one broad industry, I'll break it down. Technographics. Within technographics, is it like something we integrate with? Is it something we replace? Whatever. I'll break that down. Job descriptions, and of course, if they don't have any further triggers or like signals, whatever, I'll just go ahead and put them as a generic list. So off of each one, I might pick 2 or 3 contacts from that segment, from that particular segment I broke them out into, and just write a personalized email. Like I'll sit down and try to write a one-off email to this person, and just see how someone will write an email naturally. Because I think where a lot of people go wrong with email is they'll pull a huge list. They might not even go a segment. Even if they go a segment, it feels like they're talking to a list. They're not talking to a person. So I think that was one of the things that really clicked in my brain, because we were struggling with that for a while. And then someone kind of mentioned that to me. So I do this process every time. We just sit down and take 2 or 3 people, write a manual email to them. Boom. Another thing we do is like, and I'll let you speak after this, I kind of ramble. But basically what we do is we go on Reddit, and then if the technology is particularly like prominent, right? Like let's say for Tableau, for example, or like, I don't know, just marketing software, whatever, right? Just any sort of software. We'll go on Reddit and kind of research what the user is saying they have a problem with. And then we'll kind of write that down, see if we can do anything with that.
Nice. So then you can resonate and say like, hey, we've seen like actually people going through this current thing, and like this is what we noticed. Nice. That's awesome. Super interesting. Also, you know, it's really cool that you said that you actually go and you look at once you've generated the list, you take the individuals, and then you go in and you will write the copy for, say, 2-3 emails for writing to an individual. Because that's actually what we did when we were running the LinkedIn agency. We would never create copy first. We create it afterwards to be able to essentially look and go, okay, I'm writing to this person. And then you can then really think about what you're writing because they're a person as opposed to being a list. And also you can then take that and then use it to educate ChatGPT to be able to obviously build it out. So yeah, you're on the right path, of course.
And I'll say, like, obviously there's exceptions. Like some of my best performing campaigns break every single cold email rule, right? It's like long, I bullet point all the lists, like all the points and stuff like that, but it's still printing meetings. And I think to kind of circle back, it's like, all this process is good, but I think ultimately it's like understanding your prospect, understanding the problems they're facing every day. And if you could offer a solution to that, they're going to book me. So,
that's key. That's key. And what kind of CTAs do you see that like is working at the moment?
We do a lot of lead magnets. So sometimes we're testing, it's all like logistic. It just depends logistically, like how far we can take the client, right? But we try to start with like open to seeing a video. Do you want to, can I send over a one pager showing how this works? Just something like lower pressure. We're starting to test different, like, I guess, more value added lead magnets. So maybe like, hey, I'll audit your sites. This is depending on the client, of course, but like, hey, I'll audit your sites. Just send me XYZ and I'll reply back with this, site audit, whatever.
That's nice.
But sometimes it's like, if we're having a lot of success doing that, like maybe we're booking a ton of meetings, I might try to back it into just like regular open and learning more, so I don't have to like deal with managing stuff. So
that makes sense. But I think you're spot on when you're giving something which can pique someone's interest, but isn't pushing to a call straight away. Just to be able to evoke a yes or a no, a response is like the initial key. And how many steps do you run within a sequence?
I do 2 steps. I've been doing this for a while, but I will say, so I do 2 steps and then I space it out by like 20, 30 days. And I send the exact same email thread with a different subject line and first line.
Nice. That's cool.
So I do the testing first, of course. I do the testing, kind of winning variant, and then I just repeat it. So.
And then do you use spin tags as well? Do you use that when running on a campaign?
Yeah, I do, and I can share what I do because like I find a lot of times the spin tags is really awkward, right? So I stole this from someone else. I just get a bunch of quotes from like famous people, like 50 famous quotes from famous people, and I just put it in the bottom of the signature as a spin tags, and that does a pretty good job.
Oh wow, that is a hack. That is a hack. Like
I write the spin tags copy like this. I'm just like, dude, it sounds so awkward.
I get that. When you chuck it into ChatGPT, you throw spin tags. It's like so like every word just it breaks up the sentences and the gold.
Exactly. So that's
what
I can. if anybody wants to message me, I'll send you the quote thing I use. I spent like
put Justin Chi in the quotes as well.
I do like just random quotes like basketball players, whatever, like motivational quotes, and that is pretty well priced. So.
That's actually really, really cool. And then in terms of like the process, so you're doing campaigns for 14 days, or I guess 2 weeks is the standard, and then following that you revise, then you make changes. In terms of when it comes to looking at like campaigns and thinking about whether something's going well, how long would you wait to be able to stop a campaign if you feel it's not going well? And what are you looking for as well as an indicator?
We're pretty quick about accident campaigns. So if it hits like 3, depends on the niche, of course, right? Like some niches, like I'm be honest, like nobody wants their product. Like, you know what I mean? There's a lot of startups that came to like 2021, 2022. Nobody wants your stuff. And it's like, we got to work for what we got here, right? But it's like for most customers where it's somewhat of a desirable product, I'll say 300 to 500 emails per variant. Like if we don't get, sometimes we can't book it, right? Sometimes we just get positive replies. If we can't even get a positive reply after 300 to 500, we're just axing that. I mean, I try to write the copy myself most of the time, but I have sometimes, if it's like I can't figure something out, I will go pay a third-party copywriter. Just kind of give me a So,
And what are the kind of things you're looking at? Okay, we've gone through 500 contacts. It's not worked. We've got a 2% reply. Everyone says they're not interested or unsubscribe. We've got it's still like the open rates don't matter anymore, but it's like a 30% open rate. What
Sure.
are you looking at to cancel off? Like with me, I used to be like, okay, I'm now looking at the person's profile or the company to be able to understand if the offer's resonating. I'm looking at the messaging. I'm essentially canceling out different factors to be able to decide what I need to do next to be able to optimize my next campaign. So what do you look at as factors to be able to, kind of cut down and see where did it go wrong?
Yeah, it's hard to say sometimes. Generally, we try to be. It really depends on the testing, right? Like obviously, there's like two things I call it's like a micro test and macro test, right? Macro test is like that general angle of the email, like hey, testing different problems we're solving, testing different pitches, right? And then of course there's like micro variations like CTAs, length of copy, that kind of stuff. So generally, the first set of tests I do is based around macro tests, like macro variants, right? So it's like that's the reason I want so many variants. Basically, it's just like seeing generally which angles are working. So I figure it's like, maybe there's a million things going wrong. There's maybe some other things that are causing this copy not perform. But I always chalk it down to the general offer and the angle. When I can, I figure that's probably the reason. In most cases, I'm right. Like I haven't been wrong before. Like I'm not saying I haven't been wrong. I've literally written the same angle, but just with different phrasing, and it worked out. But it's just that's the thing with cold emails. You don't know what's going to work until you test it. But for the most part, it's just like the problem statement, that kind of stuff. You're just kind of off. We're not.
Yeah, so just like the delivery.
Exactly. So
that's interesting. So and then because you have so many macro tests, you're able to really understand what's going on because you're testing several variations of campaigns, verticals, which enable you to quickly go, okay, well, one is clearly exceeding the others, so we need to move down that direction. I think that's key. Yeah, that is a key learning there. So in terms of like the tooling that you're using, like what tools do you use to be able to kind of tie everything together from like the initial, building out your targeting, what data areas you're going to, all the way through to how you're creating copy, and then ultimately delivering, I guess, or managing to clients as well?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. We don't have a crazy tech stack. It's just Apollo, Smart Lead. We have Clay. I can touch on Clay in a second. I know people talk about that a lot. But Apollo, pretty straightforward. It's kind of, I probably shouldn't be saying this, but this is where we do a lot of the basic copywriting because they have an AI email writer. Obviously, I think the product, if Apollo's watching this, like that product could use a lot of work. We get the copy, whatever. It comes out all right. Like it touches on the pain points, whatever, but it at least saves me time. Like my VA plugs that information to Apollo, and then the copies are in there, and I have to do a lot of editing usually, like a ton of editing usually, right? But it's like that saves me a lot of time on, sitting here writing the copy basically. So that's why I use the copywriting, of course, data through Apollo. We use Clay for like waterfall enrichment as well. So like we might pull a list from Apollo, and then we'll verify the list, and then when there's those emails that aren't verified, we'll just try to find extra ones in Clay. And of course, we use Smart Lead for sending. As far as how you use Clay, I know there's some people doing like crazy stuff with Clay. I don't do that personally. Like I've tried it, and I find a lot of my campaigns are still doing very well without Clay. So maybe other people are differing. I just find the offer is king. Like I said, like the offer and the angle are king. Clay can add on top of that. So what I use Clay most for is like waterfall enrichment, and also GPT. I use GPT to like segment the list basically. So like, the example I gave you earlier, like the VP sales segmentation, that's the biggest use case I use it for. It's just like pulling a big list instead of having to manually pull list by list from Apollo. We just pull one massive list by title, and then we segment it with GPT. So that's the biggest use case I have for Clay.
So you can, in Clay, you can connect GPT just for everyone that doesn't get it, and then you're able to then break down lists. What did you mean by the waterfall as well? Just
they have an awesome feature where it's like, okay, they'll search like 4 or 5 different data sources, and then basically, let's say there's no email, it'll look for an email. If there's no email in data source 1, it'll push to data source 2, data source 3, so forth. Just make sure you actually have better coverage. So
nice. That's cool.
And then I find Apollo has bad coverage sometimes. So
I get that. Also, data isn't as live as I'd like it to be in terms of like people aren't at the same job sometimes in Apollo. So it's definitely worth doing it twice. But if you're getting started and like Apollo is good, like, it's the best place to be able to just get started. And then obviously if you can scrape Sales Navigator as well, that's interesting. but not easy to tie together the profiles to the domains. That's what we always saw as a challenge. Yeah.
Yep.
Then when it comes to be able to like go after that 2 weeks, you've gone wider on the TAM. What's next?
Yeah.
So you now revise the campaign, and then do you go like, are you now monitoring over, okay, I'm doing over the next 2 months a series of more tests to be able to achieve X? Like what is like, I guess, the North Star that you're working towards for these individuals?
My North Star is just, I mean, we've achieved this for a few clients, right? And it's easier, it's much easier said than done, right? But it's like we have a general angle that's working, and we've tested this for different industries, test the problem statement. I just want to, my goal is obviously operationally as well, right? It's like, I don't want to sit here and do lists all day, but it's like, my goal is to find that winning angle, pull a massive list of like 50,000 people and just leave it running for 6 months. That's what I want to do.
Nice.
That's my North Star for every client. So
you want to find like the winning formula that consistently generates a lead flow, and then like roughly how many leads do you see, or like qualified meetings through these campaigns every couple of weeks, every week?
Once we crack it, I would say once cracked. So I'll give you an example. One client is, we had maybe, and this is like selling VP sales, right? It's kind of like an intent tool, so it's pretty easy to sell. We had maybe 40,000 contacts in that campaign, and we're retargeting them soon. But 40,000 contacts, 2 steps, and we booked like 360 meetings or so. So that was not bad.
360 meetings over how long?
A quarter.
Over a quarter. That's awesome. That's
we were
really
blowing
good.
that
It's
up.
not bad. That's like that's crazy.
I know. And then we had another client.
Inbound functions, like
that's
crazy.
Another client, I think it was I have to go look at the stats. I think it's like 20,000 contacts or something like that. And then we booked maybe 150 meetings, 140 or so. Same approach.
That's really, really cool. And then in terms of the emails that you're setting up for these individuals, are you running them on the client's name, or are you using aliases? Are you testing like female versus male? Like what was that kind of look like?
Yeah. So when I was smaller, I was sending under my name. Now I send under the client's name. I am testing.
Okay, so you were acting like an SDR essentially on their behalf.
Yeah, I was, and then I was starting to run into like overlap. Someone would be like, "Wait, don't you work at this company?" Like I had this happen multiple times. Like, aren't you working at this company, or like whatever, right? Basically, so there's some confusion there. So I switched to my clients' names, like usually like a salesperson there. But what I am testing now is like female profiles. My friends are telling me like, oh yeah, if you have the female profies, like it's like an attractive woman, you're getting way more responses. Like, that's just how it is. So I'm testing that out as well.
It's super, super crazy. Like, that converts better. It's interesting because obviously you're going in to be able to acquire a client through probably going into a high level executive, maybe going to the founder, and then like like if they're smaller, they won't have a head of sales, but maybe they do. If they're larger, like you work with 50+ person companies as well. But then when you're taking a salesperson, will you just pick someone within their sales team that will be used as their name for this example, or will you just
like leadership if possible?
Okay, cool. Leadership if possible.
Yeah, we've noticed like actually there's an increase in conversion. So, excuse me, one of my clients is they sell HR SaaS, right? And then I sent her my name, but we switched. They had a former head of talent, like he's been a head of talent, a bunch of like startups or whatever, and we're selling to head of talents. So we put his name on, and the conversions are way better. So it's like really dependent on the client, because like we could send emails as this guy, and we're saying, hey, as a head of talent, like I know what you're going through. Seems more relatable than me just coming in and sending an email. So
that's awesome. That's really, really cool. And when you're like going through, are you handling the replies on your end, or are you giving them through to like they come into a master inbox and then they just pick up the replies every day, and or do you tag them on your side? Like what's
everything's done by us. So it's actually good you asked me that, because we are building out some process like automations for this. But it's I have a team of VAs. We're responding to the emails, and we're booking me as a counter. They're not there day to day. I'm not really there day to day at this point. Like I've trained them to do the job. There are of course cases where it's like they're asking very specific questions. So in that case, like if anybody's using Smart Lead on here, it's like you can create different tags, right? Like they obviously have their standard tags of like lead sentiment, but you can create custom tags. So I have a bunch of custom tags. There's one I have marked as too complex. They click too complex, it sends a request to my Slack channel. I'll review the email. I'll say, should I send this to my client, or can I answer this myself based on my product knowledge? and then we just go from there. So, but the client is very
Nice.
hands off. Like I try to make sure it's just they just get meetings and we talk about strategy. That's it. I don't want them to deal with the day to day at all. So
That's awesome. So what does the like average check-in look like with the client then? Is it like on a bi-weekly basis? Obviously you're handing them leads as they come through, and is that done via email or in Slack? You go, hey, you have a new meeting booked, or
yeah, we have it's over Slack, and then meetings we track that. I notify them when we get a meeting, and meeting wise, I call if I meet them about once a week or so.
okay, cool,
Yeah.
awesome. That's really really interesting. And then yeah, in terms of tracking it, like how are you doing the reporting? Is that using webhooks and pulling things out of Smart Lead into like a Google Sheet, or using CRM? So yeah, what's
That
that look
is a
like?
weak point for us right now. So like that's something I'm
Yeah.
actively working on as we grow the agency. Right now, I don't know, like I mentioned Jesse already, but Jesse Willett has a tool called Lead Magic. So the reporting
Yeah.
on there is a bit more robust than it's kind of like a smart lead layover. They have obviously a lot
Mm,
more features like lead scrapers, that kind of stuff. But it's a lot more robust than just smart leads basic reporting, which is not bad. I'm just like there's more graphs and stuff,
yeah.
which clients like. They like seeing the graphs, the bars and stuff like that. So
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's really, really cool.
yeah,
I used to have reporting into Google Sheets where we'd like pull like
yeah,
qualified conversations and all of the tags, but I've not done
yeah.
anything on the smart lead or that side. But yeah, it's you
Yeah,
can get quite advanced there.
some of my clients are still on Google Sheet reporting because they're very they want to be more hands on with like the variants, and I think the reporting with Smart Lead and the variants the Smart Lead reporting variants is fine. It just doesn't look as clean for the clients. Um, but for Lead Magic is like they have the cool graphs and stuff, but it's like they don't. Maybe I'm not using it correctly, but going into the variants isn't as seamless as I like. So I still have to do the Google Sheet stuff sometimes. Like I have to go
Mm,
update that. So that's a
the
big point I have to fix right now in my agency.
the big yeah, like it's not easy. It's like you have to sometimes even hire like an expert to be able to build this all out. But
Yeah,
like one thing I noticed, Google Sheets were easier to build into than CRMs, because if you start building into everyone's CRM, every client, you're then stuck with essentially having to set up for a new CRM every single time.
exactly.
So I was like, it's easier to just put it into a sheet, then you can plug it into wherever you want afterwards.
Exactly.
Um, yeah, yeah, so I wanted to just jump into just asking like a little bit more about the metrics wise, like what are
Yeah,
you looking at in campaigns, and
right.
what are you tracking as those indicators?
As far as like success KPIs or
Yeah,
just kind of like,
yeah, as in like
yeah,
what are you
just
looking at like daily or bi-weekly to be able to look at as like, oh, these are the indicators it's working or it's not working. Yeah.
yeah. Again, mostly just like seeing if we have any success with 3 to 500 emails. But once we have
Yeah.
that baseline established, is like, okay, how much further, like week by week, month by month, like how much better are we improving on that KPI, right? Because maybe we start and it's kind of a rocky start. We have 500 emails sent out for this particular variant, only got like one meeting or positive reply, whatever. So it's like, okay, how much further are we improving upon that as we
Mm.
progress? Like just kind of
So
the rate of,
positive replies and meetings though, like
yeah,
the end point. Yeah.
yeah. I don't even track reply rate that much. I don't track opens. Like I get it, like we get more replies, whatever. But I'm like, if we get 2% replies and like 80% of them are asking for a meeting, like that's pretty good. It's better than like 10, 15% reply and like
Mm.
one or two people asking for a meeting, right? So it's just like overall, it's like meeting book ratio to email sent, like meeting book to email sent ratio. That's what we're shooting for.
Okay.
Yeah,
Email. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So okay. Cool. Nice.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. And then like you're like heavily relying on tags. So essentially, when like an individual goes in to handle the reply, they'll then tag, and then that's how you look at the visibility as opposed to the
Mhm.
campaign metrics. Like, just yeah,
Yeah.
because like if you said you're not monitoring replies. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Awesome. Yeah, so I just want to jump into just a couple of final points, which this has been like
Sure.
super valuable.
Thanks.
What are your thoughts on like the evolution of cold email, Google changes and like how to approach that? And
Yeah.
yeah, what is your thought on that?
My what I've heard is like it only applies to I know they make a bunch of changes and I feel like it has gone way harder in the past 12 months. Like don't get me wrong there. So anybody who's sending cold emails and doesn't have this knowledge, like even if you know like DKIM, DMARC, SPF, whatever, there's like so many little nuances and whatever. Um anybody who doesn't have this sort of knowledge is gonna fall behind, right? For sending cold emails, like I would just pick up the phone, cold call in that case, or send LinkedIn message, like use Expandy, right? But I think I know they made some changes. My understanding is for at Gmail addresses only. I'm sure
Yeah,
they're
I
gonna
heard
crack
that.
down. Yeah, they're gonna crack down on us as well, but I'm not too concerned. I'm just gonna buy
Yeah,
more
it seems
inboxes.
personal, right? That's the latest. I saw personal Gmail or something. That's
Yeah,
what they were
yeah,
saying.
something
Yeah,
like that. But I'm not
yeah.
concerned. Like for me, I'll buy more inboxes, spread the risk out, and if you know what I mean? Like I guess it got a lot harder last year as well. Like if I run into issues, like which I did run into issues of April last year with some of my clients, right? Like I just didn't understand some of like basic stuff like keywords and stuff like that. Like I was kind of messing up there. We're always just gonna work
What were
past
the issues that you ran
it.
into?
It was I basically we had a vendor and they set up the DKIM mark poorly, and then we had some bad keywords in there. I think like you know free or money or whatever,
Okay,
just
yeah,
stuff
yeah,
that would
yeah.
trigger spam filter, right? Which I didn't take
Yeah,
seriously at the time. But that happens, and then we got past it. So I'm not too concerned.
yeah.
Like if it breaks, we'll figure
You have
something else
to.
out. Yeah,
Yeah, and then like you learn through that, right? Because even
exactly.
I went through like the process of going to like Easy DMark, having to like understand what happened, why is nothing coming through? Can I bring this domain back? Probably not. Time to jump on to something else,
Right.
and have learned those lessons as well.
Yeah.
What are the challenges have you had to overcome like over the past year? If you had like whilst
Yeah.
building out the agency from like the perspective of higher
I'll
level stuff outside the
say
campaign?
it's several things, right? Like first is I'll kind of list it off. So first is distraction. Second
Yeah,
is like setbacks, like the one I just told you. Is like we kind of messed up. I'll say this, like this is the past year, but before that, when I had this side gig, I was learning all this deliverability stuff. I mean, there's so many little nuances that I wasn't picking up. I just had to break a lot of stuff and mess up a bunch to really learn how to set all this up. And I'm really lucky because my first clients very supportive. Basically, just let me kind of play around and figure things out. So that kind of laid the ground for the year that was to come, like just going all in the agency, right? So definitely appreciate that. But I would say over the past year, 12 months, the biggest challenge I've been facing was getting distracted for the first 6 months. I had that rough patch in April and just basically tried a bunch of different other ideas. Like, I don't know if you ever had this happen. It's like, oh, I think this might be a good business idea. I think that might be a good business idea. Or
yeah.
even within the agency, it's like, oh, I think we should offer this. We change the price on that, whatever. My best results came when I just stopped worrying about that. I just started focusing on like
One
delivering
thing.
a good experience for my clients,
Mm.
signing more clients, and then streamlining ops. Like, stop worrying about the other stuff. You can always change the price, whatever. But if you do that, like, I think there's no way you're gonna fail. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
So
I think you're on the right path. Like
yeah.
the key learning that I had, we used to have social media management,
Mhm.
dived into the email side, then obviously LinkedIn, then offering
Yeah.
ad hoc strategies, and then when we were like, okay, LinkedIn lead generation, this is all we're doing. Obviously, it's a
Yeah.
different world to the email side, but same principles.
Sure.
This is all we're offering, done for you, managed. We're handling it all bespoke.
Yeah.
That's when we really scaled. We focused on one thing and
Yes.
productized it. So I think, like you're saying, distractions, there's tons out there. You can bring in so many different
Yeah.
moving parts, but if you just focus on making one service a success, you can then really scale properly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's just like, a lot of people work hard. Like I was working pretty hard. I still work hard. But it's
Yeah.
like if you're and that's the second thing as well. It's like I would say distraction and also just kind of letting go and delegating to people they hired. Because I was an employee for the longest time, right? So I didn't really know how to
I'm still
delegate.
learning how to do that.
Yeah, it's hard,
So
right? And
hard.
it's like
Yeah.
now I'm just like, okay, I train my team. I think they're competent. I spot check their work sometimes, but I'm hands off. They have their own way of
Mm,
doing it. I have a process I laid out for them, but if they have their own way of doing it and it's getting done, like I'm not going to step in and just tell them how to do it. It's getting done. So like, if it's not getting done, you got to do it my way. If it is getting done, do it your way. So
What's
that's the
the
second
team
thing.
setup? Sorry, go on.
I have VAs doing replies, and then I have
Yeah.
VAs doing like campaign setup. But I would say like the biggest thing is like that's where
Yeah.
I lost a lot of time is like distraction, of course. Like I was trying all these like stupid business ideas, trying these different offers for my agency, trying this, trying that, which I should have just focused on one thing. That wasted a lot of my time. The second thing I wasted a lot of my time was I was just in the day to day for a while. Like I was responding to emails and
Mm.
stuff. Like I was setting up the campaigns myself, that kind of stuff. And that sucked up a lot of my time. Now what I do is I'll do a lot of selling, strategy work, that kind of stuff. And obviously, like, I'm still in the day-to-day here and there. Like, I'm not quite at the stage where I have a full team to handle everything, right? Like, I'm still a pretty small agency,
Yeah.
but we're getting there. And I think that's those two things, like fixing those two things, is kind of what helped a lot. Especially past 3 months, it's been really taking off. So
How did you know what to hire for? Was it like I need someone to just help me with just taking some of the campaign building off of my hands first? Is that
it's
yeah?
kind of like I kind of look at I forgot where I heard this, like some YouTube video, some like motivational speaker or whatever, but it's just kind of like looking at your day and think of like the low value tasks that you have. Like replying to
Hmm.
emails, I wouldn't say it's a low value task, like it's important for the business, but I can train someone to do this. Like it's not particularly difficult, right? So I can train someone to do that. Want to go train someone to do that. Same with the campaigns. Mine is the strategy of like building the right list, dictating the angles we're sending to. Most of it's pretty straightforward. It's just following steps. So I'm like, that
Yeah.
shouldn't be hard to train either. So those two things, and they take up a lot of my time, right? Like most of my time, if I'm not selling, is spent doing those things. So I'm like, I'll hire to fix those. And then I guess the next bottleneck I see coming forward is like, okay, well, I've already laid out the campaign setup process. I've already laid out the reply process. I have it down pretty well. Um, I can just hire people. I think they would just understand, right? Like obviously I have to train them, but I think I hire people, they will understand. The next challenge for me, I think, is hiring someone to do strategy, like kind of come up with lists, that kind of stuff. That's been more difficult. I am still trying
Yeah.
to think about how to do that. But I would say it's that, like coming up with strategy and then also hiring someone at some point to manage the people who do like day-to-day operations. Like that's the next challenge. I will probably promote someone from internally. But
That's
yeah.
awesome. That's really, really
Yeah.
cool. And then in terms of like when you are bringing people in, have you built out like flowcharts on like Miro or Lucid or something to be able to like map out like this stop process from someone signing all the way through to like their end point or never end point of customer journey? So you can see, hey, this is what you need to do at this point to give it to a VA or to a team
Yeah.
member to be able to execute on.
So I've got a little pipeline inside of Notion. It's kind of like a
Okay.
sales pipeline, and I just have different stages of like where a campaign or a client is. I have onboarding tracker, I have campaign setup tracker, and then there's just different stages. Like there's a not started
Nice.
stage. I might prep some stuff for them, which is again what I'm trying to get out of it. I might prep some stuff for them. They'll go ahead and run it through the process. Basically, at this point, they're
Yeah.
just doing themselves. So
The conveyor belt method is like the best for scaling. Like these are the best
yeah,
agencies I've spoken to. I literally
yeah,
had like you've got Justin Rowe. He had this Trello board, which is just like
yeah,
card, next card, and then week one started.
right.
Week one, sorry, it was week one ended. Week two ended.
Mhm.
Month one, and just checks, and then giving people videos on
Yeah.
how to execute.
The videos are so important. Like I lay out the process like I spent the past maybe month or 2 months or so just kind of laying out every single process I have in my brain. Like, obviously, I kind of try to simplify, make it easy to understand. That's also hard as well. It's like brain
Yeah,
dumping, but then also make it easy for someone else to understand. That's what I've been doing. The videos are so helpful. Like that's kind of reduced the number of like back and forth I had to go through my employees. Like obviously I have to train them, but a lot of times they just watch the video and they get it. So there's that. And then I'm working on automating kind of notifications of the setup. Like, hey, this thing was moved into this stage. You need to like work on this part of the campaign, or you need to set this part of whatever. You need to clean this list. You need to add a list. Whatever.
that's
So
awesome.
yeah,
Have you
it's
looked
getting
at
there.
anything like a project management board, like an Asana or a ClickUp or anything like that, or Airtable, or just you sticking with
I've
Notion for now?
sticking with Notion for now. I know
Yeah.
those tools are better, but I'm just like it ties back to distraction, right? Like for me,
Yeah,
I
if it
might regret
works,
this.
it works. That's
Yeah, I
key.
may regret this in a year or so, right? Because I know people will say it's like a really huge pain to like switch tools, whatever, at some point
Yeah.
and train your team again. But I'm like, it's working right now. My goal is to get money in the door. Like that's my goal right now,
Yeah.
is to get more revenue in the door. So I'm not too concerned.
Look, yeah, you don't, yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah,
if it's working in Notion, stick with it. And then,
yeah,
yeah, you just address it later down the line. Or if it works forever, it works forever. Like the key is
yeah,
you obviously have a formula that's working. I've
yeah,
like, that's crazy. 300 plus meetings booked in a quarter for a
yeah,
client. That's insane. It's so
yeah.
impressive.
No, it
What
was
vertical
crazy.
was that? What
Sales tech.
niche was sales tech? Okay,
Sales
cool.
tech,
Nice.
sales and marketing tech always does good, even though they're so
Yeah,
saturated. Like it does so good because, like, I just tell you, we have this unique way you've never heard of to making more money. Like, who's gonna say no to that? So
yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, you're
yeah,
pushing something which is relevant to someone. They have budget probably as well, and they're active, which
unique
is key.
mechanism.
That yeah,
Yeah, yeah, unique mechanism. I
nice.
think that's the biggest thing. It's like sales tech. We kind of talk about we kind of skip past the hyper part already, but like sales
Yeah,
tech in general, like as I do SaaS, right? I find kind of being a little ambiguous, being a little vague to where you pique curiosity in the copy. that's not the best for us. Like just, make you seem like you have something unique they've never seen before. That was
Yeah.
that's been my experience. So.
And did you just do SaaS like sales tech and like that environment because it's from where you're from? Coming from Zoom Info, you come from that environment. Was that the reason
I
why?
do. That is why, and that's why a lot of people sign with me. But we do like HR tech, fintech, sales tech, marketing tech.
But all
Signing
under the
some.
SaaS kind of umbrella.
Yeah, for the most part, like developer tech, cybersecurity. Like I've tried it, and anybody watching this, if you're in that industry, like I can't do it for you.
Yeah,
It's just too hard for me, honestly. I can't.
it can be hard.
I don't have the technical know-how, and I don't. It's just not a priority for us right now. Like I'm sure at some point we will pick it up, but it's just at this point, at time recording, it's like not something we want to take on. So
yeah, you got to like find the verticals that work, and then you can copy and paste that to be able to serve more and get relatively similar results. I also saw people that do that, and that's pretty a successful path to success, which is just essentially being able to see, hey, that worked. We can now do that again with someone else in the same area. Yeah, it was also interesting because you think that you're serving a SaaS company and you're like, it's all the same, but each SaaS company wants to reach out to a completely different vertical.
Exactly.
So therefore, it's never the same, even though you're in one niche. It's actually each of their niches is completely different. So that's a challenge.
I find with SaaS, it's challenging, right? Because I find it's like hit or miss because like marketing agencies probably like 10, 15, 20 meetings a month. Like it's just like, I don't know. I don't really do marketing agencies, but my understanding is it's pretty straightforward, right? To do marketing agencies. But with SaaS, I feel like it's hit or miss. Like a lot of times the product sucks. Like nobody wants the product. Like I think a lot of tech startups do fail. It's like nobody wants the product. Well, what are we supposed to do there? But when we do have success with SaaS, it's just like out of the park. We just blow it out of the park. So.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. So final thoughts. I'd like to just ask you one last question. So so actually two. I'm lying. What are your goals over this year in your future plans? What do you want to achieve?
Just like agency wise.
Yeah, but you can share both. We'd all love to hear it as well.
Yeah, agency wise, just trying to blow this thing up. Trying to get to like 30 customers. We're around 10 right now, so like we're trying to get 30 customers, and then honestly, I don't know if it's possible within this year because I have a friend who's at that stage of getting like 100, 200K a month, whatever, and he's starting to get out of daily operations. I'm trying to get out of daily operations. Like I'm trying to get out of the day-to-day. I don't know if that's possible this year, but that is my goal. So like those are my two goals. Personal goals. I've been training like Thai boxing and kickboxing, so I want to get my first match this year. So yeah, I injured my foot on Monday. Lucky it wasn't broken, but it felt like it was broken, so I had to go to ER for that. So my goal is to get a match in June or July, and then hopefully don't get the shit kicked out of me. So
live stream that on LinkedIn. Put that on LinkedIn. We'll all be chanting.
Dude, I know. Quoting my hacks. I'll put on my shorts.
That's awesome. Let's get yeah. On your shorts, you have to have your company branding. You can have like scale. That's crazy.
Sponsor. Yeah, sponsor myself. Yeah.
It's super interesting though, man. Like honestly, like really appreciate the learnings. I feel like everyone that's listening that's getting started in the agency space can see what it really takes to be able to get there and like how to level up and overcome some of those hurdles, but also the insights to be able to understand what to focus on in campaigns and like get away from the noise, which is key to focus to be able to scale.
Noise is that's the biggest thing I would say. And also like you're starting out, like I would say like for me, like I just didn't have a plan B. Like, you know what I mean? I just had to make this work. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah. It's all or nothing. The only way like the key to success is if it's all or nothing. I get that 100%. I literally stopped what I was doing and I was like, okay, I have 3 months to be able to do this or I can't pay my rent. And if not, I have to find a way. And I found a way. You got client 1, client 2, client 3, and the next thing you know, you're rolling.
Just open like 50 credit cards or something, like make it work.
But yeah, it's the mentality, right? If you were like, this is it, there's no other option. I feel like that's when you really can make it work, as opposed to like, well, I'm gonna start applying for jobs at the same time because I may, it may not work. If you're thinking like that, it's not gonna work. You need to have self-belief and just keep going. Yeah,
exactly. Like even if you don't know what you're doing, just trust yourself that you're gonna do it. Like I would say, if you're like just starting an agency, just trust you're gonna do it. Like I didn't know anything when I started. Like obviously I knew how to code email, but like business wise. I had a failed business, like that was a good experience, but I think overall, like I didn't really know anything, and we're just kind of
And well, like you are, and it's in such a condensed pace right now, and you're able to still pick up clients. So it's like a testament to what you're doing and
Yeah,
like your level of service. But yeah,
yeah.
it's been a pleasure having you on the Lead Gen
Likewise.
Hustler show. And
Mhm.
where can the people find you? Like, where do you have anything to plug?
Yeah, yeah. I've got a calendar link. I'll send it. Should I just send it to you after the chat, like after
Yeah,
on
yeah, yeah.
WhatsApp?
We can show
Okay.
that.
I have a calendar link. You can book time. If you're a founder, like whatever, you're starting an agency, like feel free to book time or send me an email. If you are a founder, like don't get me wrong, I'll give you tips. I will try to pitch you, but I will help you out with your email stuff, whatever. So just feel free to book time with me. We'll go from there.
Awesome. All right. Well, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much,
Likewise.
Justin. It was great to have you on the show.